Okay, so future-proofing your career. It's everywhere you look, right? Everyone's talking about it.
It's the big question, isn't it?
It is, and every week it feels like there's a new must-have skill. Honestly, it can get a little overwhelming trying to keep up with it all.
Yeah, definitely.
So we decided to do a deep dive on this. There is this report out of Germany that seems like it's getting a lot of attention.
Yeah,
And what's interesting is even though it's from another country, it seems to really get at this global anxiety around future skills.
for sure.
Plus, we've got some bonus insights from one of our experts to help us unpack it all.
Well, right away, what I found fascinating was how much it emphasizes moving beyond just traditional hard skills.
So it's not enough to be like a whiz at whatever software you're using right now, because who even knows what you'll be using in 5 years?
Exactly, yeah. The report really pushes this idea that your ability to adapt and learn new things, that's becoming even more valuable than your existing skill set.
That makes sense.
Like, it's the difference between having a full toolbox versus knowing how to build anything from scratch.
Okay, that's a great way to put it. So it's less about, say, being an expert in Python and more about being the kind of person who can pick up Python or whatever the new coding language is relatively easily.
Exactly. And they break it down to help us understand how to develop this future-proof mindset into 4 key areas, or like pillars of the future. They talk about knowledge, personality, social skills, and then this is the one, methodological competence.
Okay, I'm already lost at methodological competence.
Yeah.
So maybe we can unpack those pillars a little bit, starting with that one, because honestly, it sounds a little intimidating.
Of course, and you're right, the language in this report, it can be a bit dense, but methodological competence basically boils down to knowing how to learn effectively.
Okay.
So being able to identify what you need to learn, finding the right resources, and then applying that new knowledge quickly and efficiently, which, especially in a world that is just overflowing with information, that's really key, right? Knowing how to cut through the noise and focus.
That makes a lot more sense when you put it that way, because it's like we all know how to learn new things on a basic level,
Right.
but this is about being really good at it, almost like it's a skill in and of itself.
Exactly. And just like any skill, it's something you can hone, you can improve with practice. Now, thinking about those other pillars, knowledge, personality, social skills, we touched on knowledge a bit there, but personality, that seems like a weird one.
It seems a little strange to think about personality as a skill you can develop.
Right?
Is the report saying we all need to become these, like, extroverted social butterflies to succeed in the future?
Chuckles.
Because, honestly, some days I barely have the energy for small talk, let alone networking events.
I hear you. And no, that's not what they're saying at all. It's more about cultivating traits like resilience, creativity, and self-motivation. So these are the qualities that will help you bounce back from setbacks, come up with innovative solutions, and take initiative in, a constantly changing environment.
So it's that ability to roll with the punches and not get discouraged when things inevitably go off course.
Yeah.
Which, let's be real, it seems like that's happening more and more these days.
For sure. Think about it. If you're constantly facing new challenges, being able to stay positive, think creatively, and motivate yourself to keep learning, that's crucial. And that kind of leads us to social skills, which in our increasingly interconnected world, you know what I mean, are only becoming more important.
And I feel like we've all gotten a crash course in that, especially after the whole explosion of remote work and everything. It's like suddenly everyone had to get really good at communicating and collaborating from a distance, which isn't always easy.
You're telling me, yeah, the report really zeroes in on collaboration, communication, and conflict resolution as these like essential future skills. And here's where it gets really interesting. These pillars, they aren't isolated. They all actually work together.
You're totally right. It's like you could be amazing at knowledge and methodological competence. Like you are a learning machine.
Right.
But if you can't actually communicate that knowledge or work well with other people, you're not really going to get very far.
It's true. You need both. And the report actually uses this great analogy. They say these 4 pillars, they're like the legs of a table.
Okay.
You might have one leg that's super strong, maybe that's your knowledge base, but if the other legs are wobbly, like your personality, social skills, or learning agility, the whole table's going to collapse.
I love that analogy. It really drives home the point that we need to be developing all of these areas if we want to be truly future-proof. But it's easy to say, develop your skills, right?
Right.
The report also gets into some of the challenges in actually making that happen. What were some of the roadblocks that stood out to you?
Well, one of the things that really jumped out at me was this idea that the report talks about. the dominance of really big companies in driving a lot of these future skills initiatives.
Okay.
So think about it. Larger companies, they have the resources to invest in things like, in-house training programs, cutting-edge software. They have these partnerships with universities.
Right.
They can even create their own certification programs that kind of become the industry standard.
Which leaves smaller businesses and really individuals kind of scrambling to keep up.
Exactly.
And I can see how that creates a future skills gap where people without access to those resources are kind of set up to fail almost. Were there any real-world examples of this in the report?
There were. They called out a program, I won't name any names, but basically this tech giant. They created this really intensive training program on the latest AI technology, but it's only available to their employees and then a select group of students from, top universities.
So they're basically creating this pipeline of highly skilled workers, but it's limited to people already in their network.
Exactly.
That doesn't seem very fair. What about people who are already in the workforce and maybe don't have the time or the resources to, go back to school full time?
Right, and that's why the report really stresses this idea of shared responsibility.
Okay.
That it can't just be on individuals to figure this out, right?
Yeah.
That governments, educational institutions, they have a huge role to play in making sure that training opportunities are more accessible and affordable, especially for folks who are, like you said, maybe working at smaller companies or they're self-employed.
It makes sense. You need that collective effort to make sure everyone has a shot at developing these skills.
Right.
It can't just be about who has the most money. Did the report offer any other potential solutions?
They did, yeah. One of the things they suggest is creating incentives for those big companies, the ones with all the resources to share them, or to partner with smaller organizations.
Okay.
Like imagine if that tech giant we were just talking about offered like a condensed version of their AI training to smaller businesses at a lower cost.
Yeah.
Or even made like an online version that anyone could access.
That would be amazing. It would really level the playing field and give everyone a chance to kind of upskill and stay competitive. And I imagine it would also force those companies to be more transparent about the skills they're actually looking for,
For sure.
which would benefit everyone in the long run.
Absolutely. And it's not just about access to information and training. The report also emphasizes the need for updated skills models. So how do we even measure and assess these future skills?
Right.
A lot of them, they're kind of intangible. Traditional resumes and job interviews,
Yeah.
they might not be the best tools anymore.
That's a really good point. How do you demonstrate resilience on a piece of paper?
Right.
Or show that you're a creative problem solver in a 30-minute interview?
It's a challenge. And they acknowledge that in the report. They suggest that we need to shift how we think about evaluating skills and potential, moving away from simply listing qualifications to actually demonstrating your capabilities.
So it's less about, I have X years of experience in Y, and more about I'm a fast learner, I'm great at collaborating, and I'm not afraid to take on new challenges. It's almost like we need a whole new language for talking about skills, one that puts more emphasis on things like adaptability, problem solving, those essential human qualities we were talking about earlier. It's true, it's like we're trying to use a rotary phone to explain the internet.
And it all kind of leads to, I think, the biggest takeaway from this whole report, this idea that future-proofing yourself, it's not a one-time thing.
Right.
It's not like you get a certification or you master this one skill and then you're set for life.
It's not like those learn to code in 30 days ads.
Exactly. Future-proofing, it's an ongoing process. It's really about cultivating this mindset of continuous learning, adaptability, self-awareness, being curious, staying open to new experiences, and honestly, being willing to get a little uncomfortable sometimes.
It's funny because it's almost like we're being asked to unlearn some of the things we were taught growing up. How many times did we hear, find a good job and stick with it?
Right.
And now it's all about being agile, being ready to pivot at any given moment.
It's a real shift in thinking. And the report even acknowledges that it can be, challenging, even a little daunting at times. Which is why they emphasize that it's not just about building skills, but also building your own resilience and self-compassion.
So it's not just about learning the new software, it's also about learning how to handle the stress of constantly needing to learn new software without burning out in the process. Did they have any, specific tips for building that kind of resilience?
One of the things they talk about is the importance of a support network, whether it's colleagues, mentors, friends, family, having people you can turn to for advice or encouragement, or even just to vent to when you need to, it makes a big difference.
It really does. It's easy to feel like you're in it alone when you're trying to learn and adapt all the time. Just having that support system to remind you that you're not alone, that can be huge.
Absolutely. And then on a more individual level, they talk about things like practicing mindfulness, managing your stress levels, and really celebrating those small victories along the way.
Okay.
Because it's so easy to get caught up in that what's next mentality that we forget to look back and be like, wow, I actually came a long way.
That's such good advice. So for anyone listening who's maybe feeling a little overwhelmed by all this talk about future skills, what's one thing they can take away from our deep dive today to start future-proofing themselves? Like today, what's something tangible?
I'd say just start. Pick one of those 4 pillars we talked about.
Yeah.
Knowledge, personality, social skills, learning skills. Which one feels the most intimidating? Or maybe which one have you just been ignoring a little bit? And once you've picked one, ask yourself, what's one small step I can take this week to start building that muscle?
Okay.
Maybe it's reading an article, joining an online community, reaching out to someone on LinkedIn for one of those informational interviews, or even just blocking off like 30 minutes in your calendar to learn something new. Just begin.
Small steps, consistent action. And remembering that this is a marathon, not a sprint. It's about building those habits, building that mindset that will honestly serve us well no matter what the future throws at us.
Could have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. A huge thank you to all of you for joining us on this exploration of future skills. And, of course, a special thanks to our expert for sharing their incredible insights with us today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Don't forget to check out the show notes. We'll have links to the report and some other resources if you want to dive in a little deeper on your own. And we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the trends shaping our world. Until then, happy learning.